Hey, welcome back to Authors Alcove for Fantasy Writers. Today I actually have a sci-fi, and so I'm thrilled to sit down with best-selling author Erin Ryan. Erin is the mastermind behind the Dissonance series. It's a six-book post-apocalyptic alien invasion saga that's not only captivated readers, but is also in the process of being adapted for the screen. He's also diving into a new territory with his latest release, The End Alpha. It is a Christian post-apocalyptic dystopian thriller, something that seems up my alley, that explores faith, survival, and resistance in a world on the brink of collapse. So, welcome, Erin.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
So, first, I want to just start off just asking you, was there a particular moment or inspiration that set you on this path of beginning to be a writer?
Oh gosh, I think you can thank Mrs. Walker, who was my second grade teacher way back when, because I was actually, like the whole entire class, we were given an assignment to write a whatever story we wanted to, and with college, rule paper, three-hole punch rule paper, and crude, cardboard paper cover and back. I wrote a story that was just it was pretty elementary at the time. Granted, I was in elementary school, so that fits. And I called it The Electric Boy. It totally copyright infringed on some components from E.T. because I was reading the E.T. novelization at the time, and so I actually stole some things. Don't tell anybody. Glad this is a private interview that's not going to YouTube or anything. Um, and it was weird because I was writing the book Forecast last year, which is a 9/11 historical fiction novel, and I realized as I'm writing, I went, "Holy cow! 45 years later, I'm writing The Electric Boy all over again as an adult." So that set me on the path way back when, but it kind of came full circle, I guess you could say.
I find it interesting because, my first story that I wrote, and my mom still has it, is actually Beauty and the Beast movie had not come out because I was born in 81. So, the Beauty and the Beast movie had not come out, and I was like in second or third grade. But I wrote the Beauty and the Beast story, and I might have heard it before that, like in a storybook form. But what's interesting is my third grader, my daughter, she's been writing stories that are basically portal fantasies. And I'm curious, what if she
Hmm.
becomes an author too and she ends up writing about portal fantasies? And I'll be
That'd
able
be
to be like,
cool.
you know what you wrote when you were in third grade? But
It's
like
something it's fun to look back on for sure.
I even drew a picture of this monster guy. But anyway, so you've written across multiple genres, post-apocalyptic, alien invasion, dystopian, and now Christian themed fiction. Which genre do you prefer, and do you see yourself continuing down a certain path, or do you feel that you're just always going to kind of jump between whatever is right in the moment?
Well, I think the thread that is most common between these two series is they are both sci-fi. They're both post-apocalyptic and dystopian in nature, and but the umbrella genre, of course, being sci-fi. I really like science fiction. I've tried writing fantasy. I'm a massive total geek and dork. This is a Lord of the Rings is my favorite. This is not the One Ring. I have to just clarify that. See, I'm still here, still here, still here. But massive Tolkien fan and massive Lord of the Rings fan. That was the first creative work that I really remember inspiring me from my youth to get into literary composition. And I've since become, a musician and a lyricist and all of that stuff. I am most comfortable, I think, in a genre where the protagonists are bereft of hope to a fantastic degree. I mean, how are they going to overcome this? There's a Russian author. I forget his name. Last name's I can't remember, but first name is Vladimir. And he said the goal of a writer is to get your protagonist up a tree and throw rocks at them. And so when you get them in that position, how they get themselves out of that kerfuffle really reveals a lot of their character. And so I like situations and environments where they've almost been completely stripped of hope. And how are they going to survive? I like the against great odds type of predicament to set them in. So I think this is the genre that I'm most comfortable in, whether it goes into a Christian bent with the end or a more, secular with maybe strains of faith bent like Dissonance does and has. I don't know. Depends on the times and what I'm kind of feeling like, hey, let's write Christian today. I don't know. Depends.
The book that I'm working on, or the series that I'm working on, is secular, but there's definitely Christian elements because, when it's part of your faith or this is what you believe, you can't just ignore it, even if you're writing something that is secular. And I'm curious what people might pick up on and what people might not when I have the series complete.
Yeah,
But
that's a really good question. And you never know until they pick it up and they leave the review.
yeah, or like a lot of people will see Christian elements in, Lord of the Rings and all of these others, and you wonder like how much of it was actually meant to be there and how much are they like reading in that's not actually there.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you about this is one of the most exciting parts that I wanted to ask you about is your Dissonance has been very popular. It has over 100 ratings and nearly 4.5 stars, which is very great. You're an indie writer, right?
Yep.
Yes. And so that's really awesome for that. I always get excited when I see indie writers doing so well. So, what is your favorite aspect of that particular story?
Well, Dissonance is my heart and soul. I mean, I really put my heart and soul into that one, and I really intended it to just be a single novel. There was so much story though that I didn't know about. I'm a pantser by trade, so when I write, there's two lanes you can go in. One is a plotter or a planner, and the other one is a pantser, which is much more organic style of writing. Planner is just, you cross all your T's and dot all your I's, and you've got like flow charts and all that stuff. That's so not me. I'm a much more art imitates life, organic style of writer. Dissonance was just my heart on paper. A lot of passion, a lot of hope, a lot of thematic depth, a lot of family elements poured into it, and a lot of faith. If both series that I'm working on and that I have worked on incorporate strong elements of faith. Dissonance, I wouldn't use the word necessarily covert, but it's not overt. It's not in your face. It's not a Christian, fictional series per se. The end definitely is. But I really loved writing about the struggles that Jet, in particular, the protagonist, goes through. He goes on a big character arc of cynicism to trust. He goes from wanting revenge to allowing justice. He is snarky, and immature, and goes on that character arc to maturity by the end. And I really like that. I think I put a lot of me into that character because I'm snarky and a cynic and immature sometimes. So don't ask my wife; she'll definitely verify that. But I really do see a lot of myself in Jet, and in the sequel or the prequel rather, the first one, Volume Zero Revelation. I channeled a lot of our own family into Jet's father, Andrew, and my wife into his wife, and my sons into their sons. So it was a very personal work writing that prequel.
Oh, so there's a prequel too.
Yeah, it's part of the 6 book hexalogy. So there's one, two, three, and four is the sequel, and then zero and up are the prequels.
Nice. I do know that my series will also have prequels that I will end up adding, but they take place 2000 years before. So
Wow, that's a prequel. Holy cow.
well, it's because my dragons have kind of like a phoenix life, and so
Oh,
they live multiple lives
yeah.
um, with the who when they choose. And so, like, I want to have their origin story after it, but I don't want to write that first.
And
Anyway.
don't phoenixes, they usually have like a lifespan of 1400 years, and then they build the aromatic nest, and then they light themselves on fire, and then the new phoenix. Isn't that like a 1400-year period I remember reading?
I think it's different for depending on the author,
Every
but I
phoenix.
have heard something. These ones, they live with their bonded dragon mate person.
Wow.
I've not come up with like that's one of the things that I got in my editing. I'm talking about my book, not yours, and I want to talk about yours. But yes, so it's more like a phoenix life, but they live with their person they have chosen. Anyway,
Cool.
I want to go back to yours, and I do want to ask the one fantasy element that I love when my tongue does not work. So I want to ask about the one fantasy element that I do see in yours, and that was about the gorgons and dissonance. They're terrifying creatures with a truly unique ability to paralyze and consume prey telepathically. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about these characters and how you came up with them?
Yeah, they are terrifying. I mean, um So when I first put pen to paper for volume one reality, I wasn't sure what these, I knew it was alien invasion, first of all, but I wasn't sure what form they would take. I wasn't sold per se on their visage, on their presence, on their physicality. I just didn't have that really cemented yet. They really actually bore too stark a resemblance between either Nazgul or Dementors crossed, and that's a very ethereal form. That's an intangible lack of physicality. I needed something flesh and bone that eventually could be destroyed. So I had to reach back and kind of go back to the drawing board and go, these can't be Dementors, they can't be Nazgul. Been there, done that. Been there, done that. And I said, what terrified me as a child? Well, I grew up with the Ray Harryhausen and the stop motion photography, claymation photography of Clash of the Titans in 1981. And I remember Medusa, not the re-release of Clash of the Titans, but go back to the original in 81 with Harry Hamlin. Um, the original Medusa is terrifying in that movie. And she comes full frame, and right there her eyes light up green, and this high dissonant shriek happens when she does that. You see her sneer. I had to leave the room, I remember as a kid. I was like, oh geez, and run away, because would I get paralyzed if I watched this? I didn't know. But the Gorgons definitely, they take their namesake comes from Medusa the Gorgon, and the Gorgon sisters of Greek mythology. So they have that same attribute where they have a telepathic paralytic. You cannot ever lock eyes with them. If you do, it's all over. One look and it's all over is one of the taglines of the series. They will immobilize you, and you're done. You're going to stay that way forever. Your muscles freeze and your synapses refuse to fire any longer, and you are frozen. At which point they can eat you at their leisure, and you're going to feel every agonizing bite. So, you know, if this was a lion set in a safari, it's really no different from a lion who is another predator. It just happened to be earthbound. It's just that these have this telepathic ability to render you immobile, and they're space aliens, and you don't know anything about them, and we fear what we don't know. So they are, ugh, they're barbaric, and they're going to eat you. So yeah, I hope you taste delicious.
That's fun. That's funny. But okay, so excuse me, this part that I've been really excited about asking you, and I know that most fantasy writers are, is you are actually having Dissonance, this series being adapted for streaming. Can you just give us some insider details and how that process was, getting it out there, and all of that
Yeah.
fun stuff?
This is like, I'm not pinning any hopes to this at all. I'm so excited about this. This is all my hopes are pinned to this. I believe it was March last year. I was approached by the assistant to Alan Roth, who is with Act Two Media. I got an email out of the blue, and here I am again, a self-confessed cynic. And the publishing and the writing industry are rife with scammers. So first of all, they didn't come from Nigeria, so I was like, okay, good. I think that's check that box. They can pass to the next level. The writing was all intelligible English, pass to the next level. And I vetted him. I did my due diligence on Alan Roth and his company. It turns out, James Cameron, I know who's that, directed Titanic and Avatar and Aliens and Terminator. His former wife, Gail Ann Hurd, is a pretty powerful producer in Hollywood. She put on a contest that five producers won, screenwriters won. My screenwriter was one of those winners. So I'm like 3 degrees away from James Cameron. He Alan's assistant approached me. I vetted him heavily. The cost to produce to convert Dissonance Volume One reality to a screenplay was commensurate with what I was finding online, and we were right in the middle of the ballpark range. And so I said, in 10 years, I'm going to be so remiss if I don't do this. I have to do this. So I signed up with him. He's a beautiful man, first of all, very polite, very friendly, and he knows what he's talking about. He was very collaborative, which was super important to me because the last thing you'd want is to write a bang up book that is a bestseller and is, compelling, and then give it to somebody, have them run away with it, and it's nothing like the book. That would be so deflating. He made two big changes, I remember, that were kind of like, can you not? I mean, and he was very flexible though. So he undid those and went back to what I had initially written. And he's current. It's great. It's all done. The pilot is done. The treatment is done. The character Bible is done. And he is, as we speak, out shopping it around to multiple producers, many of which and streaming agencies, many of which I could list off and you would know. Some very big ones are coming up that I am bound by kind of an impromptu NDA to not mention until they're done. But I have very high hopes, and it is very commercially compelling. So where's my wood? Knock on wood.
I knocked on it for you.
Thank you.
That is really exciting. That is something I think that like all of us kind of dream would happen for us. And so that was going to be one of my questions was like, how collaborative was it? So what is the next step now that you're waiting for, just shopping around? And so is it just a waiting period now?
Yeah, I mean, so two things can happen. Well, three things can happen. One, they can reject it outright, which no one has done. They're all currently considering it, which is wonderful. We've gone the actors route as well, and two actors did refuse to participate. I was declined by John Hamm and oh, the guy who played the original Hulk movie. I can't remember his name. Anyway, so we went down the actors route, and those two guys declined. But basically, so they can decline or they can choose to option it, which means we want to kind of put our stamp in this and say, we want to consider this as an option. Here's a nice sum of money, and just consider us, as the ones who want to do this. Or they can buy it outright, which tells everyone else to back off. This is our project. This is going to be we've not optioned this, but we've chosen to do it. That can take a long time. They can option it. It can sit there for years. They can buy it and it can sit there for years. But once they do either, especially if they option it and they decide to go ahead with it, then it is, there's a lot more storyboarding for the entire series. There's casting, there's location scouting, there's production. I mean, I get tingles just like dreaming about this because it is every author's dream. But we would of course specify in a contract, we would stipulate that my screenwriter and I are to be part of that screenwriting process and on set as an advisor, as a consultant, which is not only financially lucrative, but it gives me as the author a stake to say, Aaron, what do you think about this? And I would have veto power to a certain extent to preserve the integrity of the story. So yeah, the future looks so bright with it. And I just reread the entire series, not to perform further edits, of course. Uh, I don't want to George Lucasize anything, but it's a hefty story, and there's so much heart and so much differentiation from an average Independence Day story. No offense, because I love that movie, but it's a meaty story. I think it would go very far.
That is awesome. And I do have a question, but first, I wanted to mention that I do know other people who have optioned their books. None of them have actually gone to the next level. But one of the things that I have been told, and I think it's on my other podcast, the Writing Corner. But what I've been told is that when a screenwriter writes, they get credit on, you know, IMDb or is it IMDb or IMD? I think it's
IMDb.
IMDb.
Yep.
They get credit, but often they get ousted and new writers write, and then a new writer writes. And like,
Yeah.
so you never actually know. Does that make you nervous about the fact that this might not be the one that goes to production?
Well, again, this is where we would stipulate in the contract that we are actually part of the writing team, and you would get an author credit. You would get a screenwriter credit. And yes, there would be multiple screenwriters there, but that's part of the stipulation is that we would be part of that screenwriting team because this would not just be one movie. We would go the episodic route through somebody like a Netflix. It generates far more community and engagement that way. And then, each one would involve further evolutions of the story, further chapters of the story being fleshed out. And we would want as the author and the original screenwriter to be part of that team. Part of the reason why it would be optioned or bought is the brilliance of the screenplay as originally conceived and developed. And so if it's that good, you want to preserve that integrity with the original screenwriter and author team.
So I have a question for you. You were actually reached out to. Somebody read yours and was like, "Hey, I want to write it." Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you're not the right person to be asking this, but what would you recommend for an author who does want their book to be turned into a screenplay?
Yeah, number one, you have to write something that's really good. And I say that really humbly because I kind of make a backhanded compliment to myself that way. I'm very proud of how Dissonance turned out. The entire series is just so robust and full of heart. So it needs to be something that is commercially viable, commercially saleable to a production company. And so make sure that you're standing out. Make sure that you're not just rehashing original content that is original to someone else. Don't use AI. Don't go the AI route and have something created by AI and expect that to fly. But boy, if anybody asks me, I would say please choose Alan Roth. He's amazing. He is really, really good at what he does and in how he handles it, and very knowledgeable about the industry. The other thing they can do is if they want to pursue a different screenwriter and have a page at least that has all the details on their book and shop it around, they can go to something like Story Rocket. It basically allows you to create an online dossier of your book for whoever might be interested. You point them there. You say who I envision might star in this role would be maybe Tom Holland, or over here is Catherine Zeta-Jones, or whatever. Here's a writing sample, an excerpt from it. Here's the cover art. Here's the poster idea. Blah blah blah. And so you can begin to envision it so that you have something better to sell to a screenwriter, so they can see, yeah, he's done his homework and he envisioned this. He wants it to be envisioned by others.
I'm having so much fun talking about that, but I do want to talk about your other book, The End Alpha. What made you want to explore Christian post-apocalyptic dystopian? It's a
So
trilogy, Chris.
yeah. So, and I'm so excited. It is, I'm a Christian, number one, so I'm going to say that. And so, full disclosure, I really felt in writing Dissonance that there are elements of faith in there that were not allowed. They were somewhat repressed because it's not an overtly Christian novel. It's not a Christian novel. It's not a Christian fiction series. And so there is mild profanity. There's some barbarism. Again, the Gorgons are terrifying. And so it's not clean fiction, let's say. I really felt compelled after I was done with Dissonance to write something that was clean fiction, that was palatable to any age beyond, a fear level, little kids reading it and going, eek. I wanted clean fiction with no profanity and no sex and no bullying and no drugs. And not that I had, those elements in there. There was some mild profanity. You don't, get chased by a gorgon and go, oh, shucks. You might say something else. Um, so I really felt called is the appropriate word to write clean Christian fiction. And as a Christian, there are Bible verses in here. The scripture just flowed through me and onto the page, and it's totally appropriate and applicable. And it's a faith struggle. I wanted something dystopian where there's a future despot who is intent on the eradication of Christians in the year 2113, blaming a massive virus on them that's killed off 50% of the world's population, to set the stage for an ultimate revolt. He controls the world, and setting the stage for an ultimate revolt against him. Uh, and there are terrifying mechanoids. He's a techno trillionaire, he's narcissistic, and he's created this army of mechanoids that are like anti-Christian Terminators out there. They're not dressed, they don't look like humans, they're bots, they're robots, but they're destroyers. And you're constantly being hunted down by those in a very sinister way. He branded Christians like cattle for extermination. So I wanted something of a faith-based setting that you could ultimately have a revolt in.
And your antagonist is Constantine Goodfellow. Is that correct?
Constantine Jedediah Goodfellow was his original name. He
Okay.
has since revealed himself as anti-Christian. He believes that he's the Antichrist. He actually believes that he is the Antichrist of Scripture. He's not, but he has changed his name to Emperor Nero. And so, like the Nero of old that burned Rome and killed all the Christians, that's his. He's hell bent on that mission, literally hell bent.
I find it interesting that you chose to have him change his name to Nero. Just because like I know a lot of like background with that name and or with that person. That was actually going to be my next question was, is he based on any historical figures or
Yeah,
even fictional villains?
yeah. Jump back to AD 70. Uh, when the temple was burnt down and the Christians were routinely persecuted and killed and put to the test. I mean, that is his calling. That's exactly what he thinks he's here for. And truthfully, who he calls himself, he believes he's the Antichrist and a servant of the Day Star, who is a name for Satan. The only people that can really unmask him, who can call a spade, are Christians. So that is exactly why he's routing them out and hunting them down. And in terms of his position spiritually, he literally is trying to force the hand of God. Where's your God? Where's your God now? How come he's not saving you? So I am your God, is what he's saying. Admit it or you're going to be destroyed. And there's two choices: recant or die. It's very, very chilling the way he's branded Christians without their knowledge. And I don't want to spoil that, but it's in there. Uh, yeah, the stage is set for a massive showdown, and so I'm just beginning to get into book 3, which is the finale.
All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about both your books, I want to ask you some fun questions. One is if you could have dinner with any author, living or dead, who would you who would you want to sit down with and why?
Yeah, absolutely Tolkien. I mean, 100% Tolkien. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday, Tolkien. Um, you know, people have complimented me on my world building for Dissonance. It's not terribly difficult to build a world from a world that already exists. So I literally had my characters thread their way through Clarksville, Tennessee, using Google Street View and Google Maps. And so, these are establishments and architecture and streets that exist today. Tolkien created a world from scratch and a language and multiple languages from scratch. Oxford professor, absolutely intelligent beyond beyond what he'll ever be esteemed for. um, I believe that Lord of the Rings is the quintessential work of fantasy fiction, never to be trounced. And I want to get inside his head. How did you world build? How did you create such compelling dialogue between the characters? It's amazing, the dialogue and the interchanges that he has between protagonist, antagonist, or pro, anti. He's amazing. So it would be him. And secondly, I would love to, if he wasn't available, only if he wasn't available, I would go
Yeah.
to, yeah. So we would call upon Suzanne Collins because I absolutely love the Hunger Games. I think the premise of that story is so disturbing, and so futuristic and so barbaric, uh, and powerless. You know, Katniss Everdeen and Peeta Mellark and everyone thrust into this arena by a lot, a simple lottery. It's horrible. And they can't get food unless they put their name in for the lottery. So it's just awful. I think that her dystopian world has been emulated so many times. And I absolutely I would love to pick her brain as well.
Yeah, those two books, those two series have made a big impact on me. Like I actually read for the very first time the entire Lord of the Rings series on my honeymoon of all times.
Oh, no better time, right?
That's what, and I actually just recently reread The Hobbit, and I was thinking I want to reread Lord of the Rings, and I actually have it like sitting on my end table. I have not actually picked it up and started reading, but there's been many times where I keep thinking I want to start reading that again. And what's funny is The Hunger Games is one of them that I read on a family vacation as well, and because like I had kept hearing about it, and I tend to try to stick with more like younger, like middle grade, because I am like 12 at heart. But I kept hearing all these things and I just devoured it. And I don't think the third book had come out yet, but
Hmm.
or the last book had not come out yet. Um, but I did read like the other two right off the bat. I loved it. All right, so now I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests. If you could give one piece of advice for an aspiring writer, especially those drawn to post-apocalyptic or dystopian fiction, what would it be?
Can I give three? Can I give one that's really three?
Yes, it's so funny
Um,
because some people are like, my mind is blank, and other people are like, well, I have too many to tell you.
yeah. Yeah, I think the number one, and it's so pertinent to this day and age, is however much you can steer clear of the employment of AI, so much the better. Um, Generative AI in particular. Now, AI in and of itself, when people use AI for plot ideas or just brainstorming, whatever, fine. But there are far too many people that have forsaken true creation in the name of capitalism. And what they've done is they basically, go to Chat GPT or OpenAI and they say, give it a prompt for tell me a story. They copy and paste, then they go to Midjourney and create a cover. They slap it all together, throw it up on KDP, and boom, they're a capitalist. You're not a creator. You didn't create anything. A computer created that for you at great expense to the environment and to other creators because AI models are trained on the backs of existing creativity, and you've stolen and you've called it your own. And I think that's really despicable. So if you use it for idea creation, fine, don't use generative AI. Use this. You were given a gift of creation by the creator. Use that gift. It's amazing what you could come up with. So believe in yourself to be able to do that. The second thing I would say is have a motto. My motto is your focus determines your reality. Um, I that's comes from a movie I like to pretend doesn't exist, Star Wars One: The Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon Jinn says that to a young Anakin Skywalker. Your focus determines your reality, and I love that phrase so much. I had it put onto a little plaque so I could remember this, day in day out. Your focus determines your reality. The more you focus on something, I was focused on being a successful voiceover artist. It became a reality. This is my studio behind me. I'm the voice of United Healthcare, among many others, and it pays our mortgage. It's wonderful. It's being eroded by AI. That's another reason that the industry is eroding under the weight of AI. So, but put your mind to it. uh, your focus determines your reality. My focus now is to become a best-selling author, check. An award-winning author, check. It is to be an author whose works were adapted to the screen and on screen. That's my focus right now. That'll become a reality. And thirdly, just be yourself. Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." Don't try to be the next Tolkien or Asimov or Collins or Rowling or anybody, King, Crichton, Clancy. Just be you. You've got a unique voice. If you want a tip of the hat and nod every now and then and thank you, Tolkien. That's okay, but write in your own style. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
I love that quote. I haven't heard it in a while and I kind of forgot existed, but I think now that it's in there, I'm going to store it for future use. I love that, especially
Yeah,
because I do interact with so much of the younger generation. I think that's what the younger generation needs to know. Just be yourself.
yeah.
And off of the chat GPT or AI or whatever, um, I am getting very irritated with voiceovers that are from AI because like you'll think that it's normal, then all of a sudden there's something and you're like, that's AI, like a
Yeah,
lot of commercials lately.
yeah.
And it's, yeah. And I don't like that it's taking away work from people.
TikTok reels, Instagram reels, they're replete with them. And I get it. But when the fair market rate, it has always been the fair market rate, and people know what that rate is, and they go, let's buy Respeecher or Speechelo or Speech Ocean for $49 once, and then they throw in their script and they give it, and we can tell when we hear that voice generated from AI, we always know. Huh? Wait a minute. You can always tell as a human when something's inhuman, and I just can't believe people are settling for that.
Yeah, and some of them are pretty realistic, so I'm curious like how much more realistic it's going to be. But if there's always that little detail and it like
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it. But I have a love-hate relationship with AI because like you, I do use it for some things, especially with for ideas for marketing and that. But yeah, generative, I do not appreciate, but I do use it for like helping me like marketing ideas and stuff like that. The stuff that I'm just not naturally that the stuff I don't have passion for, but is necessary for continuing on doing what I do have passion for.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, I just want to thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation and very excited. I hope that you reach out to me to let me know when your book actually does get adapted, or if it gets, even if it just gets options, that we can pick your brain and hear all about that. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, and I also want to thank my listeners. If you want to learn more about Aaron Ryan and his work, you can visit his website at author aaronryan.com. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow Authors Alcove for fantasy writers and leave a review. It helps more people discover these amazing conversations I have with authors. Also, you can join our writing community through Patreon and our free membership site at authorsalcove.com. Again, may your quill stay sharp, your imagination boundless, and you always outrun the gorgons. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.